The journey begins. The old bus groaned and rattled as it climbed the winding mountain road, leaving behind the noise and dust of the city. Inside, 12 college students laughed, joked, and played music from their phones, completely unaware of what awaited them at the top of Mirpa Hills. It was a camping trip organized by Professor Khalid, their history teacher, a quiet man with round glasses and a habit of speaking in riddles. He had chosen this particular location because of its historical significance, though he had been unusually vague about the details. Among the students were best friends Sarah and Nadia, both sharp, funny, and completely fearless, or so they thought. Sarah had long dark hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes the color of deep forest. Nadia was louder, braver, always the first to dare someone to do something stupid. There were also Bilal, the class joker who couldn't take anything seriously. Osman, calm and analytical, always watching. Hira, who had brought 3 novels and planned to read by a fire, and Cameron, who had his camera and planned to document everything. As the bus climbed higher, the trees grew taller. The sky turned from bright afternoon orange to a deep bruised purple. The music on the phones slowly lost signal. One by one, the screens went black. "Where exactly are we going, sir?" Osman asked, leaning toward Professor Khalid, who sat at the front, staring out the window. The professor turned slowly. "A place that has been waiting," he said softly, "for the right visitors." Bilal laughed from the back. "Sir is being dramatic again." But nobody laughed for long, because that's when the bus turned a corner, and they all saw it. At the top of the hill, surrounded by ancient pine trees, stood a massive dark bungalow. 3 stories tall, with broken windows that looked like hollow eyes, a crumbling veranda wrapped around its entire body, and a rusted iron gate that stood half open as if someone had left it that way, long ago, expecting guests. The bus stopped. The engine died. Silence. "Welcome," said Professor Khalid, stepping off the bus first, "to Mirpa Lodge." Nobody moved. Then Nadia grabbed her bag and jumped off the bus. "Come on, scared people. It's just an old building." One by one, they followed. But as Sarah stepped off the bus and walked toward the gate, she noticed something that made her pause. On one of the upper windows, 3rd floor, far right, a curtain moved, and there was no wind. The inside of Mirpa Lodge smelled of damp wood, old stone, and something else. Something sweet and heavy, like flowers left too long in a closed room. The students spread across the large central hall, setting up sleeping bags, lighting lanterns, and trying to make the cold stone floor feel like something normal. Cameron walked room to room taking photographs. Hira found a dusty bookshelf and began pulling out old books. Bilal found a broken gramophone and pretended to dance with it. But Sarah couldn't relax. She kept looking at the staircase. It was a grand staircase, the kind that must have been beautiful once, carved wood, a thick banister, rising up into darkness. Now the upper steps were lost in shadow, and the air from above felt different, heavier, watching. "Don't go upstairs," Professor Khalid said quietly, appearing beside her. "I mean it. Stay on the ground floor tonight." "Why?" Sarah asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because this house has a history, and some histories do not like to be disturbed." He walked away before she could ask anything else. Around midnight, the lanterns began flickering. First one, then another, then all of them, in rhythm, as if something was breathing. Hira screamed. She was standing near the bookshelf, holding an open book, her face completely white. "Look at this," she whispered. The book was a journal. Old, leather-bound, filled with Urdu script. Cameron translated as Osman held the lantern close. This lodge was built in 1887 by a British officer named Pemberton. He abandoned it within 3 months, leaving no explanation. Local villagers refused to come near this hill. They say the hill is home to a powerful jinn, ancient, solitary, and deeply possessive of this place. The jinn, they say, is drawn to beauty. And beauty, once noticed by this entity, is never forgotten. Silence. Then Bilal laughed. Okay, so basically this jinn has good taste. The gramophone switched on. By itself. Old crackling music filled the hall. A haunting melody, slow and strange, from a machine that had no electricity and no winding key. And from somewhere above them, from the third floor, came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4. Walking toward the staircase. Nobody goes up there, Osman said firmly, grabbing Bilal's arm before he could say something stupid. But then Sarah looked across the room and realized something that made her blood turn cold. Nadia was gone. Sarah found Nadia on the second floor. She was standing at the end of a long corridor, completely still, facing a closed door. Her arms hung at her sides. Her breathing was slow and deep, too slow, too even, like someone in a trance. Nadia. Sarah grabbed her friend's arm. Nadia turned. Her eyes were open but distant, glazed like frosted glass. "Did you hear it?" she whispered. "Hear what?" "The music. It was calling me. It was so beautiful, Sarah. The most beautiful thing I've ever heard." She turned back toward the door. "It's behind this door." "Nadia, stop." The door opened by itself. The room beyond was unlike the rest of the house. While everything downstairs was rotting and dark, this room was different. Draped curtains of deep crimson, carved wooden furniture, candles burning in brass holders, candles that nobody had lit. The air smelled of oud and roses. And in the center of the room stood a figure. He was tall, impossibly tall, nearly touching the ceiling. He wore a dark sherwani that moved as if in a wind that wasn't there. His face was angular, striking, ancient, like a face carved from shadows and memory. His eyes were completely black, with no white, and they burned with a deep intelligence that was not human. He looked at Nadia. Then he looked at Sarah. And something shifted in his expression, not malice, not hunger. Something far more dangerous. Recognition. As if he had been waiting. As if he had seen them before, in dreams, in the past, in some other time. "You have come," he said. His voice was low, resonant, layered, like multiple voices speaking as one, each from a different era. At last. Sarah grabbed Nadia's hand and ran. They flew down the corridor, down the stairs, screaming for the others. Behind them, no footsteps followed. No sound of pursuit. Only that voice, calm, unhurried, echoing off the walls of the old bungalow. "There is no need to run. This place is mine. And now, so are you." Downstairs, chaos. Everyone awake. Professor Khalid on his feet, his face drained of all color. "You went upstairs," he said. "It wasn't a question. What I asked that thing?" Sarah demanded. The professor sat down slowly. His name, the name the villagers gave him, is Malik el-Kohar, the master of the mountain. He has lived in this place for centuries. He appears only when something captures his interest. He looked at the girls. He has never been known to harm, but he has never been known to let go either. Let go of what? Nadia asked, her voice still a little hollow. The professor looked at her with eyes full of old guilt. Of the ones he has chosen. "We leave. Now." Bilal was already stuffing things into his bag. "The bus won't start," said Osman from the doorway, his voice flat and calm in the way it got when he was trying not to panic. "I checked. Engine won't turn over. No signal on any phone. We're stuck until morning." The temperature dropped another 10 degrees. Outside, the pine trees began swaying violently. But there was no storm, no wind, no rain. The trees moved as if pushed by invisible hands, great slow circles, like something pacing around the bungalow. Pacing. Watching. "He won't let us leave," Nadia said quietly. She hadn't moved from the wall since they'd come downstairs. Her eyes were clearer now, but something in her was still turned toward that room upstairs, like a compass needle that couldn't find north. "Don't say that," Cameron snapped. It's true. I felt it when I was up there. He's curious. He's not trying to hurt us. He's just," she paused. "He's lonely." "Oh, wonderful," said Bilal. "The ancient terrifying jinn is lonely. Shall I get him a hug?" "Bilal, enough," Sarah said sharply. Then the tests began. First, the voices. Each student began hearing sounds tailored to their deepest fears. Cameron heard his camera clicking in another room, and when he went to find it, it was showing photographs he'd never taken of this bungalow, empty, shot from inside, dated 30 years ago. And in every single photograph, standing in the background, was the tall figure. Hira opened her books and found the pages had all changed. Every novel, every chapter, had been rewritten about this hill, this lodge, this night. Osman found a room where the walls were covered in equations that, when he stood close enough to read, described the exact physical dimensions of his worst nightmare. Being trapped underground, alone. Bilal stopped laughing. In a corridor, he saw his own reflection, but the reflection didn't move when he did. It just stared at him, slowly shaking its head, as if disappointed. But the hardest test was Sarah's. She found herself in a room she hadn't entered. A room that appeared between two other rooms that should have been touching. Inside was a single chair and a single candle. And her grandmother, dead 3 years ago, sitting in the chair, smiling. Sarah froze. "Beta," her grandmother said softly. "Come sit with me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Her foot moved forward, then stopped. No. She knew. She felt it with everything in her. "This is not her. You are not my Nani," Sarah said, her voice shaking but firm. "Whatever you are not her." The figure in the chair tilted its head. The smile changed, became something older, something ancient, something filled with strange admiration. Then the room dissolved, and Sarah was standing alone in the main hall, heart hammering, completely unharmed. From somewhere above, a low sound. Not threatening. Almost like approval. Dawn came like a slow exhale. The trees stopped moving. The cold lifted. The strange sounds faded one by one like a symphony finding its final chord. All 12 students were alive. Shaken, some still trembling, none of them harmed. Professor Khalid sat in the center of the hall and finally told them the truth. "I was here before," he said. 22 years ago. A trip like this. I was a student then." He removed his glasses and cleaned them slowly. Only 8 of us came back to the bus that morning. Silence. "What happened to the others?" Hira whispered. "They weren't taken by force. They stayed. By choice. Or something close enough to choice that it becomes impossible to distinguish." He looked at the staircase. He doesn't take anyone who truly, with their whole self, refuses. That is his rule. His only rule. But he tests you first. He tests whether your soul has cracks he can slip through. Sarah understood now. The room with her grandmother. The test. She had passed. They had all passed. But as the students moved toward the door, Nadia paused. She stood at the foot of the staircase, looking up into the darkness. "Nadia." Sarah took her hand. "Come on." Nadia blinked, looked at Sarah. Then, slowly, she smiled, really smiled, her real smile, not the glassy trance from the night before. "I'm here," she said. "I'm okay." They walked out into the morning light. The bus started on the first try. As it pulled away from the bungalow, Sarah looked back through the dirty rear window. The bungalow stood silent and still in the morning mist. But on the 3rd floor, far right window, she saw him, the tall dark figure, standing completely still, watching them leave. His black eyes caught the light for just a moment. And in them, Sarah saw something she hadn't expected to see in a creature so ancient and so powerful. Sadness. He was lonely. He had always been lonely. And perhaps that was the most frightening thing of all. Not the haunting, not the tests, not the voices in the walls, but the eternity of his solitude. The bus turned the corner. The bungalow disappeared. Nobody spoke for a long time. Then Bilal said, very quietly, "I'm never leaving the city again." And for once, nobody laughed. Because somewhere behind them, on a hill surrounded by ancient pine trees, behind the broken windows of an empty bungalow, a jinn stood at his window and watched the world go by, as he had for centuries, waiting, as he always waited, for the ones who would be brave enough to pass his tests, and perhaps, one day, brave enough to stay.